Let me tell you about the most dangerous sentence in traffic law enforcement. It's not a legal threat, it's not a demand. It doesn't sound scary at all. In fact, it sounds like the officer is doing you a favor. Look, I'm trying to help you here. This will go a lot easier if you just talk to me. My client Michael heard those exact words sitting on the shoulder of Interstate 95 at 11 p.m. He was a 38-year-old project manager, completely sober, pulled over for drifting slightly over a lane marker. Michael was a reasonable person. He thought, the officer seems friendly. I have nothing to hide. Talking it out is the smart move. So he talked. 45 minutes later, he was in handcuffs. Not because he'd done anything illegal that night, but because he talked his way into a situation that a simple two-sentence response would have ended in 5 minutes. What I'm about to show you is why this phrase is the most effective psychological weapon used during traffic stops, what it's actually designed to accomplish, and the exact response that shuts it down without creating confrontation. Because understanding this one sentence could be the difference between driving home tonight and spending it explaining yourself to a judge. I have heard versions of the same story. The officer seemed friendly, the conversation seemed casual, and somewhere in the middle of that conversation, everything went wrong. That pattern isn't a coincidence, it's by design, and most people have no idea it's happening to them until it's already too late. Before we break down exactly how this works, if you want to understand the real psychology and the real law behind police encounters, not just memorized phrases but actual understanding, subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I post content that genuinely explains what's happening during these stops, not just what to say. Now let me show you why this phrase works so well and why it almost always benefits the officer, not you. The psychology. Why it works on everyone. 3 reasons this phrase is so effective. This phrase isn't improvised. It's a trained communication technique, and it works because it triggers 3 deeply human psychological responses simultaneously. The first response it triggers is reciprocity. When someone says they're trying to help you, your brain automatically wants to help them back. This is one of the most documented principles in social psychology. When a person in authority extends what feels like generosity or goodwill toward you, the instinctive human response is to reciprocate. Officers are specifically trained to establish this dynamic early in an encounter, before you've had a chance to think clearly about what sharing information actually means for you. The second response it triggers is anxiety relief. Being pulled over is stressful. Your heart rate increases. Your thinking gets less clear. When an officer offers what sounds like a way to make the situation easier, your anxious brain latches onto it. Talking feels like a path out of discomfort, but talking during an investigation almost never actually reduces the situation. It adds to it. The third response is the most powerful, the false alliance effect. When the officer says, "I'm trying to help you," they're positioning themselves as being on your side. But here's the reality you need to hold on to during that moment. An officer conducting a traffic investigation is not your advocate. They are investigators. The information you give them goes into a report. That report may be reviewed by a prosecutor. That prosecutor's job is to build a case. The friendly officer and the prosecuting attorney are on the same side, and it is not yours. None of this means every officer is acting in bad faith, but the phrase, "this will go easier," serves the investigation, not you. And the sooner you understand that, the better your outcomes will be. What easier actually means. The word they don't define. Here's a question nobody asks at the moment. Easier for whom? When an officer says this will go easier if you talk, they mean it will go easier for the investigation. More information gives them more to work with. Your explanation might confirm what they already suspected. It might reveal something they hadn't thought to look for. It might contradict something another witness said. It might contain an inconsistency that gets used to challenge your credibility later. Easier for the investigation is not the same as easier for you. Those are 2 completely different things. My client Michael, the project manager I mentioned at the start, made this mistake. When the officer asked where he was coming from, Michael said he'd been at a work dinner. The officer asked if alcohol was served. Michael said yes, but that he'd had only water. The officer said he could smell something on his breath. Michael explained he'd had a mint recently. Each explanation gave the officer a new thread to pull, and each thread led somewhere Michael didn't intend to go. By the time the stop was over, Michael had placed himself at a location where alcohol was present, explained a smell on his breath, and given a timeline of his evening that the officer documented in detail. None of it was untrue, but all of it became part of a report that made the next 30 minutes of Michael's life extremely difficult. Talking didn't make it easier for Michael, it made it easier to build a case. If what I've just explained is already reshaping how you'd respond to a friendly officer, hit that subscribe button right now. I want to show you 4 variations of this phrase that officers use because it doesn't always sound exactly like, "This will go easier." Sometimes it sounds even more convincing. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next video. Now, let me show you those variations. The 4 variations. Recognizing the pattern in different forms, once you understand what this phrase is designed to do, you'll start hearing it in forms you never recognized before. Here are the 4 most common versions. Variation 1. I'm going to be honest with you. This sets up a truth-telling frame. After telling you they're being honest, the officer asks a question. The implicit message is, "Now you be honest with me." It triggers the reciprocity response. Whatever follows this phrase is what they actually want you to confirm. Variation 2. Look, I already know what happened. I just need to hear your side. This one implies that evidence already exists whether you talk or not, so you might as well explain yourself. But "I already know" is frequently not true. It's a tactic specifically designed to convince you that silence is pointless. If they already knew everything, they wouldn't need your side. Variation 3. I'm giving you a chance to explain before this gets worse. The word chance creates urgency and a closing window. It suggests that if you don't speak now, the opportunity disappears. But your right to remain silent doesn't have an expiration on the roadside. You can invoke it at any point. Variation 4. Off the record, just between us. This may be the most dangerous variation because it creates an illusion of privacy. There is no off the record during a police encounter. The body camera is running. The dash camera is running. Dispatch has a record of the stop. Off the record has no legal meaning in this context. Anything you say is on record by definition. All 4 variations trigger the same response from you. Calm, polite, consistent. The exact response. What to say when you hear any version of this phrase. Here is the complete response, word for word, that protects you in every variation of this situation. Officer, I appreciate that. I'm going to provide my required documents. Beyond that, I'd prefer to have an attorney present before answering questions. That's it. 32 words. Read them again. You're not saying you have something to hide. You're not accusing the officer of anything. You're not being hostile or uncooperative. You're acknowledging their statement, confirming you'll provide what's legally required, and invoking your right to counsel before answering investigative questions. If they repeat the phrase in a different form, you repeat your response in exactly the same words. The consistency of your response is actually part of its legal power. Consistent, calm assertion of your rights on camera is exactly what your attorney needs if anything goes wrong. If the officer says invoking an attorney makes you look guilty, you say, "I understand, officer. I'd still prefer to have an attorney present before answering questions." That's all. No argument, no explanation, the same calm response. Why silence is legally protected. The constitutional foundation. Some people worry that staying quiet will be held against them in court. Let me be clear about this. The Fifth Amendment to the United States Constitution protects you from being compelled to be a witness against yourself. That protection applies during traffic stops. It applies before arrest. It applies before Miranda rights are read. The Supreme Court has consistently held that invoking your right to remain silent or to have an attorney cannot be used as evidence of guilt. A prosecutor cannot stand in front of a jury and say, "The defendant refused to answer questions, which shows they had something to hide." That is not legally permitted. What's legally permitted is the officer feeling frustrated. What's legally permitted is a tense moment on the roadside. What's not legally permitted is using your constitutional silence against you as evidence of wrongdoing. You will not be punished in court for saying 32 words and then staying quiet. You might face a more difficult next few minutes on the roadside, but the legal protection is real, documented, and consistent. Michael's outcome. What happened and what should have happened? Back to Michael. After 45 minutes on the shoulder of the highway, he was given a field sobriety test, which he passed. He was released with a warning for the original lane drift, but his evening cost him 45 minutes, significant stress, and a documented record of everything he'd said. His name was now attached to a report that described a work dinner with alcohol present, a smell the officer noticed, and a detailed timeline of his movements. What should have happened? Michael hands over his license and registration. The officer asks where he's coming from. Michael says, "Officer, I appreciate that. I'm going to provide my required documents. Beyond that, I'd prefer to have an attorney present before answering questions." Stop. 4 minutes. Warning for lane drift. Home by 11:15. The conversation that felt like cooperation was the most expensive part of Michael's evening. The silence he avoided would have cost him nothing. If this changes how you'll respond the next time an officer tries to make a traffic stop feel like a conversation, subscribe to this channel right now. I break down the real tactics used during police encounters so you understand what's happening in real time, not just what phrase to say. Hit that subscribe button and turn on that notification bell, because the next video covers what to do when officers say, "I'm going to pat you down." And most people don't realize that phrase also has a legal standard behind it. Important disclaimer: this is educational content only, not legal advice. Every situation is different and laws vary by state. For guidance specific to your circumstances, always consult a licensed attorney in your jurisdiction. Nothing in this video creates an attorney-client relationship. This will go easier if you just talk to me. Now you understand what that sentence is designed to do, and you have 32 words that respond to it perfectly. The easier path isn't always the one being offered. Hope you never need this, but now you've got it.